Hello and welcome to Math World. Today we're going to talk about transformations. Transformations are just a way to move the parabola around the graph by changing the equation. So if you look over here, I have an x squared, and here's my basic parabola. I'm using a graphing calculator online called Desmos graphing calculator. So desmos.com will bring you here. And it's cool because if I change my equation, like maybe adding 3 to it, I can easily see what happened to my graph. The parabola has now gone up by 3. What happens if I do minus 3? Well, the parabola has gone down 3 on the y-axis. And that is called a vertical translation. It's vertical because it went up and down, and translation means that we just moved the vertex. And that's it, a vertical translation. Let's go back to our normal parabola, and let's try to move it left or right. We can move it left or right by doing a plus or minus inside the parentheses. Notice this time I put the plus 3 inside the parentheses, and it moved the parabola to the left here. We're going to call that a horizontal translation. Horizontal because it's moving left to right. One important thing to notice is that when I put a plus 3 inside, it moved it to the negative 3. That's because inside of the parentheses we have the opposite direction, or the reverse sign, just like when finding our zeros. If I want to move it into the positives, I'd have to do a minus 3. Minus 3 moves me into the positives. So this is a horizontal. Now what's cool is I can put them together. I can have a horizontal translation of 3, and on the outside maybe a plus 2, and look at that, the vertex moved over 3 and up 2. And that makes sense because look at the equation, it's in vertex form. You all could have told me earlier that this was a vertex of positive 3, positive 2, and it is positive 3, positive 2. There's our vertex. So these are the two things that move our vertex, translations. What other types of transformations do we have? Well, we can flip the graph upside down by putting a negative in front of everything. If the leading coefficient is negative, look at that, I flipped the parabola. We're going to call that a reflection. Reflection because it reflected over itself. And all I had to do was put a negative in front, and it made it flip upside down. Take the negative away, and you have a upward opening parabola. What else can we do with this parabola? Let's go ahead and put it back in the beginning to the regular parabola. And this time I'm going to put a leading coefficient not 1, maybe something like 10. What happened to the parabola? Oh, well, it got a lot narrower. We're going to call that a dilation. A dilation is when we change the parabola's width. If we make a number greater than 1, you see it got very narrow. And if we put a number less than 1, like maybe 0.2, it gets very wide. Both of those are dilations. And again, we can combine all of the transformations. Transformation is just a word for all of the different types of things we can do. And we now have 4 of them. So let's put them all together. Start at the basic parabola. First, I want to move the parabola, let's say down 1. Okay, so I put a minus 1 on the outside. There's a vertical translation. Then I'm going to move it over to the negative 4. Notice that it had a horizontal translation of negative 4 by putting plus 4 inside of the parentheses. Next, I want to make it reflect, so I'll put a negative in front of everything. And lastly, I want to make it wide, so I'm going to put 0.1. And there we go. We have a parabola that has been vertically translated minus 1, horizontally translated negative 4. It's been reflected, and it's been dilated to 0.1. All 4 transformations. So when we see these parabolas, we can describe them in all those different ways, and just by looking at this equation we can kind of picture what is happening to the parabola. Well, that's it, and I'll see you in class. Now for a word from our sponsor, Paper Cut Games. This week's game is 100 Swords. I got this game on Kickstarter, so you might have to find it on eBay or something, or eventually it'll get sold on their website. But it's a pretty cool little micro deck builder game. 100 swords. Basically, the way it works is you start out with a very small deck of cards that include just some boots and a crappy sword and an awkward sword. But as the game goes on, you will fight different monsters like this Fishman, and you'll acquire bigger swords like Wither Sword and better boots, quick boots. And whenever you acquire things that go to your deck, and it kind of makes your deck more powerful so that you can beat bigger monsters. And so there's a deck of cards. It's a very small, simple game, and you lay out different cards, and as you play, you kind of go through the cards and they'll flip over and tell you what it is, whether it's an item or a monster. And the goal, of course, is to get the most kills and collect the most items and then beat a boss. And it's a pretty simple game. It looks like it's going to be expanded a lot. They already have 2 different decks you can play with and 4 different like booster packs to add new things to the dungeon. But I played it and it was pretty fun. So check out 100 Swords.